welcome to Guitar Gods Unleashed. Today on Guitar Gods Unleashed, I want to talk about finger tapping. Today I want to talk about finger tapping, and in particular, Eddie Van Halen and the history of tapping and where it came from and who was doing it first and such and such. Now, I always believed that Eddie was the first one to do finger tapping. I've thought it for many years. And then I found out, because of the internet later, that actually there were lots of other guitar players that were doing it before him. I don't want to take anything away from Eddie Van Halen. I love his playing. He's one of the all-time greats. His songwriting and everything, he was just a legend. Guy's a legend, right? But I've made this video to try and gather some evidence to show that actually it was being done way before Eddie did it. Now, this video is made for entertainment and educational purposes, and hopefully it will show a bit of the history of finger tapping in the guitar world, and maybe where it came from, and who was doing it first and such and such. Now, Eddie Van Halen made tapping popular in the guitar world. There's no denying that. And once he came out with that first album in 1978, the first Van Halen album, where tapping was all over that album, lots of guys copied him and started putting it into their own playing and everything, and then some guys took it further even later, and today it's just, tapping is just a thing on guitar. But there was a time before Eddie where it wasn't really that well known in the community of guitar players, but it was being done, and that's what this video is about. So Eddie seriously made tapping famous with his track Eruption that came out in 1978, but the album was recorded in around August, September and October of 1977. That's when it was recorded, right? Now, Eddie was playing Eruption as a live solo before that, like maybe even a couple of years before that, but the tapping section didn't used to be in it originally. It was just like a load of other stuff. The first time I've heard tapping in that solo was in June 1977, right? That's the first time he seems to do tapping on any bootleg recording. June 77. Now, if anyone knows that he was doing it before that, please let me know in the comments, and proof if you can of when he was doing this tapping before that, because it seems like he was not doing it until that date. Then after that, tapping was just a thing. Now, we get to our first player that I'm going to talk about today, and it's Brian May. Brian May was doing tapping around the same time as Eddie, Brian May from Queen, and he did a track with it in 1977, and he may predate Eddie. It's kind of around the same time. It's interesting. But Brian May says that he got tapping from some other guy called Rocky Athos. So, you know, tapping was definitely being done by other players before Eddie anyway.
This is the solo from It's Late. This uses some hammering on technique, which I never pursued very far, but for instance, Edward Van Halen has pursued a long way and made something completely different out of it, really. But this was a little piece of fun for me at that time.
just want to jump in here and say, like Billy Gibbons, I mean, there's usually a guy that says he got tapping from someone else and he got it from someone else. It's just kind of like this big history thing, and it's hard to sort of pinpoint when it all happened. But Billy Gibbons says that he had a friend called Van Wilkes who was tapping. So these guys all knew each other. Here's Stanley Jordan. Stanley Jordan was playing conventional guitar when he started out, but before Eddie's first Van Halen album came out, Stanley Jordan was now doing tapping. So that definitely, even though the video clip is not obviously before Eddie, but Stanley Jordan was definitely tapping. 76, 77, he was tapping by then. Check it out. The Harvey Mandel story is interesting. Apparently this guy Harvey Mandel was tapping way before Eddie Van Halen. This guy was tapping in the 60s, and there's actually proof on his albums, you can hear it. There was tapping licks being done very similar to Eddie. I think this is where Eddie pretty much got it from. He took the ball and ran with it though, made like kind of more interesting music with it and made it popular. But Harvey Mandel was definitely doing it before Eddie. And there's, I mean, even Richie Blackmore from Deep Purple says that he saw Harvey Mandel doing this tapping, and apparently even Hendrix was there or something. And so Hendrix may have seen tapping in his lifetime. So Hendrix knew about tapping as well. So the story is that Eddie had a friend called Terry Kilgore who was in the same area as him. They were like rivals, but also friends. And Terry Kilgore learnt tapping off Harvey Mandel, and then he showed it to Eddie, apparently. But Eddie definitely saw Harvey Mandel play live as well, so he saw it up close and in person. And that's where I think he got it from, even though Eddie says he got it from Jimmy Page. I just don't know if I believe that story. He says he got the idea from watching Jimmy Page do like a one-hand pull-off or something, and then Eddie says that's where it came from, but I just don't believe that that's really true. He'd definitely seen guys do tapping. I think that's more likely the case, but for some reason he didn't want to credit anyone else with it. He just thought, I'll just say I got it from Jimmy Page, because Jimmy Page was cool, I guess, and maybe Eddie thought, I want to take credit for it myself, rather than crediting some unknown guy. So I don't know, but it's interesting. Now you're going to see some other players now, like such as Angus Young, who did a little bit of pick tapping around the same time as Eddie. There's also a song they did called Little Lover on the first, it was on High Voltage on that AC/DC album, one of the early albums. And there's a solo in it, and if you listen to that solo, Little Lover, I'm not sure if it's tapping or not. It sounds like it could be tapping. I've not put it in this video, but like, listen to that. It sounds like it could be. There's also other guys like Larry Carlton did a tap before Eddie. Joe Satriani says he saw tapping on TV in the 70s, which was Wishbone Ash. So you can check that out now in the video. Satch got that. He was already experimenting before Eddie Van Halen. So George Lynch of Dokken fame says that George Van Epps, this jazz guitar player, was tapping in the 50s. Now I've listened to some of the music of George Van Epps and I've not really found much, but there is definitely a tap or something occasionally at the end of a song where you just check it out, it's there. That's in the 50s. Here's Frank Zappa tapping on TV, way before Eddie Van Halen was even known. Now check out Emmett Chapman, who invented the Chapman stick, a full-on tapper in the 70s.
Chapman.
Has what?
Emmett Chapman has invented something called the Chapman stick. It is a new musical instrument. This is a Chapman stick. This strap, I guess, goes over the shoulder. What, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 strings.
10 strings.
Are they strung like a guitar or what?
They're strung in uniform fourths, similar to a guitar. A removable housing for the electronic pickups. Mm-hmm. And they're pickups similar to guitar pickups.
Now, do you play it by plucking as you do with the guitar?
No, I play by tapping. Each hand is playing independently, like a piano would play and tap piano keys. I'm tapping strings. 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 I'm tapping strings.
At Bunker, the philosophy has always been to think out of the box, not to think like other guitar companies, and always try to create something better, something that, in fact, as I developed the touch guitar, I found lots of things that didn't work for me when I was trying to get enough volume and tone and sustain by merely tapping the strings.
I wonder if you folks looking in ever saw a guitar like this. Well, I know you didn't. This gentleman is Dave Bunker, and he built this guitar. Down here is it's really not a guitar. What do you call it, Dave?
Duo-lectar.
Duo-lectar.
Yes.
And you built this?
Yes, you built and manufactured.
You built, and how many strings up here on this?
There's 6 on the upper neck also, both tuned standard.
And how do you play this up here?
This is played with the right hand touch only. In other words, as you touch it, you produce the tones.
And how many years did it take you to build this thing?
8 years.
8 years?
8 years.
Friend, would you play a song for us on it?
Yes, sir.
Dave, we hope you a lot of luck with this new guitar, what?
Now this is pretty unbelievable. You check out Jimmy Webster. This guy was doing crazy tapping stuff like in the 50s, man. I mean, this is insane. This is crazy. This is way before Eddie Van Halen. Like, I don't even know if Eddie Van Halen knew about this, but it's insane that this guy was, he was recording this stuff back in the 50s. Jimmy Webster. Amazing. Now you have this guy Vittorio Camodese, I think that's how you say it. He wasn't even like a professional guitar player, he was just an amateur guitar player, but he had a tapping style, and he was even making music with it. It wasn't just single taps. I mean, he was actually creating music with it and playing scales and stuff, and it's all documented on video. He was on TV in Italy in like the 60s, like 1965, and he was on it a couple of times, maybe even before that, and there was one after that, but I found some footage. It's in black and white, but it predates Van Halen by at least 10 years. And this guy was tapping all over the neck, man. I mean, this is crazy. This is insane. This guy was doing it. I mean, I don't know where he came up with this stuff. Did he just invent it himself? Who knows? But Vittorio Camodese, absolute legend, man. Check it out. Amazing.
Dottor Vittorio Camardese.
Buonasera.
Io la ringrazio molto di essere venuto.
Io ringrazio lei di aver invece di pizzicare la corda. La percuoto.
Straordinario, veramente, perché quante cose nuove si possono fare con una cosa. Con questa specie di corna lei
Sì,
tocca
con l'indice e percuoto e
il tasto.
ottengo il contrabbasso. Con questo.
Now you have Steve Hackett of Genesis here, who was definitely tapping, about 71, 72, and there's footage of it as well. And he reckons he invented it as well, possibly before Eddie, but Steve Hackett, well, Vittorio Camothese was doing it before this, so Steve Hackett was one of the early tappers, definitely. Roy Smeck, he was a vaudeville player back in like the 30s, banjo, fiddle, ukulele, guitar, and he was tapping on these instruments as well, and he was doing this this is decades before Eddie Van Halen, so check it out. It's really interesting, amazing to watch. What a great player this guy was, incredible performer, amazing stuff. And there you go, 25 guitar players who were tapping before Eddie Van Halen. At least most of them, some of them around the same time, it's hard to tell, but 25 players who were tapping before Eddie. I think that you could find more if you wanted to, but there's 25 there, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully it was a good history lesson on tapping and document some evidence there that this was being done way before the first Van Halen album. Not that I'm taking anything away from that Van Halen album, it's a classic, it's a brilliant album, it's one of the greatest debut albums of all time, if not the greatest debut album of all time in rock, you know. Wow, yeah, so thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to Guitar Gods Unleashed, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.